Hello, my name's John Biltcliffe. I'm an industry specialist solution architect here at AWS. I'm going to be talking to you about our Cloud Native Agile Production, or CNAP, demo that we're showing at IBC this year. This is really a piece of thought leadership about how we can rethink fast turnaround workflows. So typically news and sport customers, but also anybody who is needing to repurpose live content while the event is still going on. This is very applicable to you. Now, for those sort of customers, typically there have been a number of different challenges. There's really more and more content out there, more leagues, more sports that are wanting coverage. But at the same time, there's a need to drive down costs, both for the lower value content, but even for some of the higher value content. So customers are asking for greater flexibility, the ability to scale up and down, to vary their cost base to match what they're doing, and to have different tiers of content production going on. But equally, where customers have been moving these workloads to the cloud, they're finding they're very typically lift and shift of existing solutions. They're very complicated. They're often quite tied to particular vendors. And you end up with complex systems, lots of different storage elements going on copies of media still. And so we've been looking and saying, how can we simplify this world and be much more cloud native? So while we were thinking about this, we came across a piece of work that BBC R&D had done in the UK, which they called a Time-addressable Media Store, or TAMS, which is very much the same concept that we at AWS have been thinking about. And so we partnered together to say, right, let's work on the same work here and drive this in one direction rather than going in different ways. And so we've been working with BBC R&D on their TAMS specification, and what we did was we brought together a set of initial partners to try and build an end-to-end ecosystem, prove the concept, and refine the APIs and technology as required. And that became what we call the CNAP project, the Cloud Native Agile Production project. Now, this has a very clear aim, and what we were looking at was to develop an open and interoperable cloud-native solution for fast turnaround workloads. Open and interoperable being really key. We want to make sure customers have their choice of tools that they can plug in easily through an open standard API that is well described, that is understandable. So there's no vendor lock-in or tie into particular formats here. We want this to be as open and interoperable as possible, but also cloud native, using the scalability, flexibility, elasticity of the cloud, so customers gain all those benefits as well here, as well as all the things like API driven and CI/CD pipelines and all those sort of good things. And while we focus this on fast turnaround workloads, as we see those are the most challenging, so thinking about news and sport, this, as I said earlier, it can be used for any fast turnaround workloads, so sort of Saturday night entertainment shows, talent shows, but also AI analysis where you want to do that on live content, or just general content productions as well. But the fast turnaround, we recognise, has the most difficult requirements in there, which is why we're focusing there. And all of this fits with the Movie Labs 2030 vision, which we're big supporters of. So the whole thing is around bring your content and hold it once. We remove the need for growing files on a file system and then archiving to S3, for example. All of the content resides within object storage, and then the applications come and get that content from where it is. So really, we see this aligning very, very heavily to that Movie Labs vision here. So at the heart, what does this do? Well, we looked around and said, how do other areas do growing files, effectively live content on an object storage? And we realised that streaming media is already doing this. So what we're effectively doing is converging what's happened in the streaming world already and the broadcast worlds together. So bringing content in, it's written as a series of chunks into the object storage. Now, in the streaming world, that was then typically brought together using a manifest file, and of course we can have multiple renditions here going on. What we've done within the TAMS concept is, rather than having the manifest, those fragments are now referenced through an API that basically has the recipe that describes how do those chunks fit together in terms of video and audio flows, and bringing the multiple renditions together, all of which describes a single piece of source content that we would typically use. So when an editor goes and loads a piece of content from a TAMS store, they see that source, pull that in, and the reading system then goes and looks at the TAMS store and says, where do I find this content through that API? So users shouldn't see anything different, but it opens up a lot more flexibility underneath through that API layer. And actually it opens up some interesting possibilities of editing by reference, where if you're reusing the same chunks across multiple edits, you can do these as pointers within the API rather than rendering and duplicating all those frames. It also brings us to be able to converge a whole set of different use cases together. So take the example of a news broadcaster with a press conference. By bringing that into the TAMS store once, that can then be used by all the different departments that need it. So the live channel with its gallery, live news channel into post-production to make new packages, social media, very fast access to content. The TAMS store can act as an origin even for the website, and then you can be archiving this content off there. So it brings a lot of efficiencies by converging this into one world and removing the need for multiple encoders. So overall, we're seeing real benefits for both customers and partners here around that open interoperable approach, much more flexibility, scalability, removing a lot of the traditional constraints here, deduplicating workflows and really accelerating the ability to work here through the way it functions underneath. And in the IBC demo, what we're building is, as I said, a basic end-to-end workflow. On one side, we've got the ingest through TechX's TX Darwin. We've got edit tools from Cutting Room and Adobe Premiere via Drastic plugin to be able to manipulate that content from the same store as it coming in live. And we've got the Viz Vector Vision Mixer mimicking our gallery for the live playout. And we've also got the ability to stream the same content on a mock news website to show how it can be used sort of into the streaming world as well, all from that same source. So trying to build what we've been talking about here as an initial technology demonstration. So if we dive into the demo and show you what we can at this point, this is the TX Darwin product from TechX. This is doing our ingest here. So coming in as an SRT feed, this is what will be the output of our Newsroom in the Cloud demo, and we'll be ingesting a number of other sources from them as well. And we can see the thumbnail of it coming in. We can see the audio and video statuses, and that's then being ingested into our TAMS store and on an ongoing basis here. We can actually see that content in a TAMS store. The TAMS store we're using is an open source implementation from AWS for the API. You can go and download that off GitHub and install it and get started today. This is just a simple UI we've then put on top of it in order to visualize what we've got. And we've got all our different pieces of content here. And I can come in and I can see the source that I've got here, which is my newsroom feed. I can go and see the different elements that make it up. In this case, there should be one video and one audio, but again, the API is flexible to be able to support multiple of those within the same source content at the top there. And we've got an HLS representation to be able to go and view that content back, so the same source that was coming in through the TX Darwin. Ultimately, we prefer that customers went to the native API and picked that up directly off the API, but this HLS endpoint has allowed us to do some visualization of the content. During IBC at this point, we will then take the content into Cutting Room's web-based edit platform, where we can access that live content as it's coming in and do some basic edits there. We will also take it into an Adobe Premiere via a plugin, a TAMS plugin from Drastic, to enable the content to be accessed from the TAMS store directly. And ultimately, longer term, we want to see the native published back reusing fragments, but that's part of the longer term roadmap. But when the content is back in the store, we can then play it back on the Viz Vision Mixer. So what we have here is a simple web page that allows us to control the Viz Vector Vision Mixer at the bottom here, and some players to get the content in there. So if I take my CNAP player player 2 and put that source ID in and load it, we should then see, here we go, on the bottom here, it is our newsroom output is actually now being played back on the CNAP 2 port. And I'm controlling one of the MEs here, so I could then cut that as I would in the gallery. And actually, if we go and look at the main vector, this is the newsroom in the cloud view, we can see in the middle here the different CNAP players. So we've talked about being able to ingest through the TX Darwin product, edit in Cutting Room and Adobe Premiere, and play back on the Vision Mixer. The last piece is we're able to access the same content on a mock news website. So we talked about being able to stream the same content live on your website, and all we're showing here is a basic implementation using an HLS endpoint onto the TAMS store to be able to play that content back and stream it through a website. So hopefully this demo was interesting to you. Please come and see us at IBC in Hall 5, or if you're watching this after the show, then if you're interested in understanding more about the CNAP project, either as a customer and how this can help you in your day-to-day production, or as a partner how you can integrate this, then please get in touch with us. Thank you very much.